Okay, this meeting is being recorded. I hope that everyone received that message from Zoom informing us that the meeting is being recorded. Good morning and welcome everyone to the 12th annual Mel King Institute breakfast. So exciting to be here with everyone. My name is Casey Starr and I am the Director of Community Initiatives at the Maine South Community Development Corporation in Worcester. And I'm also a steering committee member of the Mel King Institute, a proud steering committee member of the Mel King Institute. And I am going to try to be your MC for the day. So I'm excited to be here with everyone and welcome. One of the best things about Mel King is just the wide community that we have here. And in this space this morning, I know that we have our students, we have program participants, partners, funders, allies, friends, and sponsors. And we thank you all so much for your participation in Mel King Institute, and we welcome you into this space this morning. A couple of quick housekeeping things. We are just going to ask folks to keep themselves muted when they're not speaking so that everyone else can hear. And if you wouldn't mind putting your last name, your first and last name next to your name on Zoom, that would be really helpful as we try to track attendance. So thank you so much. I do want to start off this morning with a land acknowledgement. A land acknowledgement is a statement on intention to be more mindful of Indigenous communities and appreciate the land we are gathered on today. We acknowledge the sacred lands where we work, live, learn, and build community has been a place where people have lived for over 13,000 years. This land is the territory of the Massachusetts, Pawtucket, and their neighbors, the Wampanoag and Nipmuc peoples, who have stewarded this land for hundreds of generations. We recognize the repeated violations of sovereignty, territory, and water perpetrated by invaders that have impacted the original inhabitants of this land for 400 years. We extend our respect to citizens of these nations who live here today and their ancestors who have lived here for over 500 generations, and to all Indigenous people. We also affirm that this acknowledgement is insufficient. It does not undo the harm that has been done and continues to be perpetrated now against Indigenous people, their land, and water. Thank you. To start this morning, I would like to introduce our presenting sponsor, Eastern Bank. We're so grateful for everything that Eastern Bank has done for the Mel King Institute, and I am going to pass it off to Pam Feingold, who is the Senior Vice President. Thank you, Pam.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to join you here on behalf of everyone at Eastern Bank. Thank you for all that you do. With us today are extraordinary housing advocates who are leading economic and development opportunities for our most underserved communities. Your work and the need for safe, affordable housing is more important than ever. We are so proud of our partnership with all of you. I just want to take a moment for reflection on the theme of this event, celebrating community resilience. In my 30+ years in community development lending, I have cherished the resiliency of how we have all come together around the housing community and rallied to provide safety, security, and a place of being for the less fortunate. And now, as we're facing a once-in-a-lifetime generation crisis with the pandemic, the importance of having a safe, affordable place to call home has been exacerbated and intensified. We live in a society that can often encourage the individual over the whole. Yet, we must remember this, during the most devastating moments, community, not the individual, is what allows us to prevail. It is a motivator for Eastern's Community Development Lending Group, which focuses on the development of affordable housing and supporting those in our community so they may have an opportunity to prosper and thrive. We have provided more than $2 billion in socially responsible development loans over the last 20 years to area nonprofits. Our partnerships with so many of you make possible the revitalization of communities across our region and create more accessible and affordable housing for those in need. We could not do this without you. And the inspiration you give us through your work is carrying through to the Eastern Bank Foundation as well. One area of focus for the foundation's work is safe and affordable housing. From Boston to our gateway cities in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island, access to safe and affordable housing is becoming ever more challenging, and even more so for people of color, where wealth building through property ownership is far too often a struggle. We are again announcing our commitment to fund $250,000 in CITC grants for 2021. So you see, beyond our community development lending, Eastern is here to partner with you and the community in many ways as we can to create new opportunities for the underserved. I want to extend a special shout out to Mel King, the pioneer of community development and our hero. Mel, you rock. Thank you for all you do. I'm proud and honored to be here with all of you this morning, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful welcome, Pam. And thank you so much for everything that Eastern Bank does for both Mel King Institute as well as our greater field. And as you said, the theme of today is celebrating community resilience, and that's just the perfect theme for after the year we've had. And it's so wonderful to be here with everyone today to be able to celebrate community resilience and all the work that community partners have done over the past year. This morning is filled with short videos, testimonials from our partners, and a dynamic conversation with NeighborWorks CEO Marietta Rodriguez. I know that we're going to have an awesome morning, and we are hoping this is an engaging morning. So I noticed that people are going into the chat and mentioning what they're having for breakfast. You know, usually in the past we're able to break bread together, but I definitely encourage you to participate and engage in the chat. Talk to us about what you're having for breakfast, and please, you know, participate as much as possible in today. There's a lot of opportunities for everyone to get to chat and meet new folks. I am going to now take a moment to read and thank our sponsors. We're so grateful for the sponsors of the Mel King Institute's 12th annual breakfast. I'd like to start off by celebrating our platinum sponsors. Our founding partners, of course, are listed right below. Our platinum sponsors for this wonderful event is the JP Morgan Chase & Company, Kuhn Charitable Foundation, MHIC, Massachusetts Housing Partnership, NeighborWorks America. Our gold sponsors today is Boston Private and Wynn Companies, and our silver sponsors for this morning is CHAPA, Coalition for a Better Acre, Harbor Light Community Partners, Kevin P. Martin and Associates, Klein Hornig LLP, Massachusetts Growth Capital Corp., M&T Bank, Needham Bank, NEI General Contracting, NeighborWorks Housing Solutions, TD Charitable Foundation, the Boston Foundation, the Life Initiative, and Tufts Health Plan Foundation. You may see all of our brown sponsors listed on the page. Thank you all so much for your commitment and support of this event in the Mel King Institute. I am going to now pass it over to Leah Downing. For anyone that has not had the chance to meet Leah, she's amazing. We're so grateful for everything she does to the Mel King Institute. She started actually last August during the pandemic, which is pretty amazing. And she's been running all of the trainings and programs completely virtually. Leah, thank you so much for everything that you've done for the Mel King Institute over the past year. Today, Leah is going to present the video projects that she managed. And I'm going to pass it to you, Leah.
Wow, thank you so much, Casey. I appreciate that introduction. It is my pleasure to present the first of 2 videos for the breakfast this year. Every year we produce a video to honor our year of work and inspire others to support us to continue our work. Last year we did 3 videos and that worked super well in the Zoom online format, so we wanted to do 2 again this year. In accompaniment of our theme, celebrating community resilience, we created 2 videos that highlight responses to the COVID-19 pandemic and racial reckoning last June. In particular, this first video, we wanted to highlight some of the essential racial equity work 2 of our Mel King Institute programs continue to focus on, specifically our Undoing Racism partnership through the People's Institute and the Community Development Mentorship Program. I wanted to thank the Transformative Culture Project, specifically Matt, and all of our lovely participants who submitted videos for the final product. And now we will go ahead.
The People's Institute is an international collective of anti-racist, educators, and it uses a systemic approach for developing leadership in these areas and maintaining accountability.
It's been a delight to collaborate with the Mel King Institute, with Haymarket People's Fund, with Simmons School of Social Work, and with Boston College's Center for Human Rights, as well as our Lynch School of Education and Human Development, in supporting and sustaining undoing racism training with the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond. This requires not only our own engagement with the partnership, but building small groups and ever-widening networks of faculty, students, and staff.
The Undoing Racism Partnership is important because I get a chance to work with my collaborators, and we hold each other accountable for uplifting the work, the community nonprofits that participate, expand the discussion and take it out of the ivory tower.
We're delighted to see a network that's been developing here in New England.
People give me encouragement and support, and I get more and more effective strategies for how to continue the work.
And we look forward to inviting anyone who participates in Mel King to please sign up for a workshop, join us in this effort, and sustain and support our partnership.
What's really great about the Community Development Mentorship Program is that it pairs mentors with mentees. I've been pleased to be paired with you because I get as much, if not more, out of it than you do, is the really nice little secret.
I think the way you phrase that just now is spot on. Whether it's gender, race, ethnicity, or just work experience in general, that just kind of come together and you can have dialogues about what to expect moving forward in the community development field.
To act meaningfully when it comes to racial equity, especially in the communities that we serve, because the residents of our communities deserve that and so much more.
Yeah, I mean, I think the programming that was laid out, through the mentorship program and Mel King Institute it's fairly deliberate. It's very thoughtful, very insightful about how do you think about from a systematic institutional standpoint. We have deliberately cut people out from opportunities to access, whether it's wealth building, whether it's home ownership, BIPOC community, AAPI, low-income folks. Like, these are all people that have been negatively impacted from strategies and social engineering to make sure that they are disenfranchised.
I've been largely inspired by the amazing response, the connectedness and the love and the generosity that people have shown.
I feel very fortunate to share with you as well, and just kind of thinking about the community development space in general and how you get people that were closest to the pain to be part of the solution.
What's wonderful about this program in the community development field, and Boston as a whole, is that I think people really do value diversity and inclusion and lived experience.
You see CDCs in part spawning from the reaction to saying, you don't know better than us. We actually are the experts of our community. We might not be experts in planning. We might not be experts in sort of how to put together a LIHTC deal, but we absolutely are experts about how this should sort of best come together. And you have certainly helped me understand how important CDCs are and sort of how the community development space functions. And I think that's the beauty of what CDCs can do for people.
That was so awesome, Leah. Thank you so much to everyone who put that together and everyone who participated in that video. What a wonderful start of the videos, of the morning. It just was like really inspiring and helped us, talk about the collaboration and really exemplified what Mel King does best, right? The Mel King Institute is it has such an impact both on systems and on individuals. And we're just so grateful for everything that the Mel King Institute does. It was such a nice, I think about the Community Development Mentorship Program as well as the Undoing Racism Partnership, and I'm just really impressed with both programs. Thank you so much for that, Leah. I'm next going to introduce Karen Keller, who is the Executive Director of LISC Boston. And of course, LISC Boston is a founding partner of the Mel King Institute. Take it away, Karen.
Thank you, Casey, and good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with you. I'm Karen Keller. I'm the Executive Director at LISC Boston. As Casey said, we're a proud founder and continuing sponsor and partner of the Mel King Institute. As some of you may know, LISC Boston was the first of what is now more than 35 local offices, but the fact that we have a training partner like Mel King Institute makes us the envy of all of those other LISC offices. That partnership takes a very concrete form in our AmeriCorps program, where Mel King provides a year-long community development training program to our members that helps make this program a pathway to the community development field in Massachusetts for so many. I'd like to recognize the LISC team members who keep our partnership strong, particularly Marilyn Sanchez, who leads our AmeriCorps program and participates on LISC's behalf as a steering committee member at Mel King's Alliance for Racial Equity, Tia Weiss, who represents LISC on the Mel King Curriculum Committee, Emily Jones, who co-leads energy efficiency work with Mel King, and Margaret Keaveney, who's working with Mel King to increase our joint training opportunities to build a robust and diverse pipeline of real estate project managers in the community development field. But my job today is actually to introduce another amazing colleague and leader, Deborah Jackson, who is the president of Cambridge College. The college is a partner of the Mel King Institute and is recognized as one of America's top 100 graduate degree producers. Their School of Management is ranked third in awarding master's in business degrees to African-American students, which is higher than any other private nonprofit college in the nation. Little background on Deborah: prior to joining Cambridge College, she served as the CEO of the American Red Cross of Eastern Massachusetts and is vice president of the Boston Foundation. We're excited to have Cambridge College as a formal partner on the Mel King Business Development Certificate Program, which is also a partnership with Mass Growth Capital Corporation. This program is key to supporting local businesses, especially now as we work together to drive an equitable recovery for the businesses hardest hit by the pandemic, and to build a stronger, more equitable ecosystem supporting them. The Business Development Certificate Program is a critical piece of that ecosystem. This year, we completed our second cycle of the Business Development Certificate Program, certifying a total of 51 providers virtually since the program launched last year. Please welcome Ms. Deborah Jackson.
Thank you so very much, Karen. First of all, let me say welcome and good morning to all of you getting up so early for this event, this very important event. And I want to congratulate the Mel King Institute for Community Building on your 12th anniversary. I'm delighted and honored to have been asked to join you and give a few remarks. I too want to also acknowledge Mel King, who I've known for so many years. Since my arrival in Boston in the early 70s, he was an icon already in the community. And we've watched over many years as Mel has had his touch and his influence and his commitment and his passion make such a huge difference in our communities. So I'm just so thrilled also to be able to honor him through our work with the Mel King Institute for Community Building. I also want to mention and acknowledge Pam Feingold, who just spoke on behalf of Eastern Bank. I happen to be a member of the board of directors of Eastern Bank. I'm so very proud of the work they do. And so my dual connection with this morning and this program is very exciting and heartwarming for me. Let me just say a few words, which I've been asked to do, speak for just a few minutes about this partnership and its importance. Cambridge College, we are celebrating our golden anniversary this year, 50 years old. And as you all know, in the higher education sector, that's pretty young. But we are young and mighty and fierce. And like the Mel King Institute, we have been committed since our founding to creating opportunity, to opening doors of opportunity and closing the equity gap for people who have had challenges and barriers to accessing higher education, which, as we all know, education is the key to opportunity in this country. So our commitment has been to opening those doors to students who are extremely motivated. Most of our students are older. They arrive with work and family commitments, yet they persist in getting their education. So when the opportunity arose for us to partner with the Mel King Institute as well as Massachusetts Growth Capital Corporation to develop a certificate program, this was exactly along the lines of the work that we do at Cambridge College, creating programs that provide additional credentials and training for adults, and then also have a direct benefit in terms of what those students and those graduates then use those certificates to do. As you may know, and as Karen mentioned, we launched this program in early 2020, just before the pandemic, forced everyone to go into quarantine. And since that time, we have, as she mentioned, graduated over 50 students who moved very quickly from in-classroom seats at Cambridge College to virtual modalities. They have therefore persisted, like our students in our college programs do, to get these certificates. This program is designed to support and educate business counselors and technical assistance providers who work at community development corporations, community development finance institutions, and also other nonprofit organizations in building and improving their skills that are then used to provide support to small businesses that are led by women, people of color, immigrants, and that are based in low-income communities in both urban and rural areas. The work that they provide and the support they provide for these small businesses covers an array of areas: marketing, business planning, how to deal with leases and contracting. And in turn, those businesses grow and thrive because of the support that these advisors and counselors are providing. So the multiple impacts of this program are so significant in, again, closing the opportunity and equity gap. We've all heard the numbers that in the greater Boston area, a Black or family has a net worth of about $8 compared to white families that have net worth of $250,000. People hear those numbers and they think there's something wrong with the data. Those numbers are accurate. How do we close that gap? By creating opportunities, by training, and small business ownership. Ownership creates wealth. Small businesses owned by people of color and women, hire more people of color and women, are based in the community, and therefore contribute to the growth of that community. So this is a very exciting program for us. We look forward to continuing this partnership with you, and to seeing the numbers of our graduates grow, which in turn helps more and more small businesses throughout the Commonwealth. Thank you so much again for inviting me this morning. Congratulations to our graduates, many of whom are here. Thank you to the sponsors of these programs, including Eastern Bank, which I'm a part of, and also to all the team and staff at the Mel King Institute for Community Building. Congratulations on this celebration of 12 years of incredible service, but most importantly, incredible impact in our communities. Thank you for the work you do.
Thank you so much, Deborah. That was really powerful. And I think the way you spoke about the program was just so exciting. You know, you spoke about your students persisting over this past tough year, and that just resonates so much with all of us, and especially with the theme of today's breakfast and celebrating the resilience of our community. Exactly. So thank you so much. And everything you said regarding, you know, closing the opportunity gaps and the economic gaps and celebrating the importance of small businesses in our community just echoes with so much of us here at this morning. So thank you so much. Next, I'm really, really excited. We are going to have some poetry during this event today. The first poet that we have, I'm excited to announce, is a Boston Latin Academy student. Ma Camara is going to join us this morning and read us a poem that she wrote. My understanding is that Ma is a junior, I believe. I think you're a rising, I'm not sure if you're a rising junior or rising senior, but thank you so much for being with us this morning. And I'm gonna pass it to you to read your poem.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I am a rising senior. I was a junior. So the poem I'm going to read is titled Solitude. Like leaves we have left, and the spur of the moment, rushing to saved arms and closing walls from the so deep. It's right within our mind and our hearts. While we go into rooms, eating far departure. Shared goal isn't or not. It's a caution. Save each other from ourselves. Eyes to eyes. Hey, feel each other from my friend. I'm protected. Can you guys hear me?
No, Ma, I was just about to interrupt you. I'm so sorry. We're having some trouble hearing you, unfortunately. Do you think maybe taking off your camera might work sometimes, if you wouldn't mind?
Yes. Can you guys hear me?
That's so much better. Would you mind starting from the beginning? It's just such a
Yes.
powerful poem. We'd like to hear it in full.
My poem is titled Solitude. Like leaves we have left in the spur of the moment, rushing to safety's arms, enclosed in walls from a disease so deadly it instilled fright within our minds and our hearts. While we go, nature blooms, thanking us for our departure. Our shared struggle isn't for naught. It's a precaution to save each other from ourselves. Hands to eyes to eyes, hands to glass, a rhythm of hearts beating in a song. We will feel each other again. For now, my friend, I must protect you, and you, me. Thank you.
That was amazing, Ma. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I'm almost speechless. It was really wonderful. Thank you so much. It was really moving. You know, after the year that we've had, it was just really moving. So thank you so much for that beautiful poem. You know, that poem really talks about, you know, the poem is entitled Solitude. And we just went through this real year of solitude. And now is really an opportunity for us to connect in the Mel King Institute. So kind of moving from solitude to connection, we're going to take an opportunity to do some networking and breakout sessions. I'm going to pass it over to Tiana Lawrence, who's the wonderful MKI fellow, who is actually focusing on the public housing training program, as well as the Alliance for Racial Equity. Tiana, if you could please, Leah is, okay, the meeting is being recorded, guys. I'm assuming that everyone is back. Nadine or Leah, can you guys give me a heads up? Everyone's back. Awesome. Thank you so much for doing that. I hope everyone had the opportunity to connect with folks, hopefully folks that you don't normally get to connect to. I know I definitely did. I'm feeling inspired. We had a good conversation with both Ma and Jason Boyd about what books we're all reading. And I was totally inspired by the books that both Ma and Jason are reading. So it was really nice to be able to connect. It's such a great opportunity in these spaces when we're able to go into those breakout sessions and meet new folks and hear about the important work everyone's doing. So it was really nice. I do encourage you to feel free to go into the chat and share any of the learnings that you had or any of the conversations you had. It's a good opportunity to maybe share that with everyone else in the group. The next thing that we are going to do is we're going to have another video. I'm very excited about this video presentation on community building. And for our second video, the focus is on how the Mel King Institute's professional education programs that have continued to build community and remain resilient and relevant through the COVID-19 pandemic. MKI instructors found innovative ways to engage participants virtually, which we know is challenging, and the MKI Institute has done an amazing job doing it. And our certificate cohort program has provided a community to continue to build connections. I'm excited to watch this video, and I'm going to let folks take it away.
In March of last year, the COVID-19 pandemic impacted people's lives in a variety of ways, both large and small. Community development organizations across Massachusetts had to quickly find ways to continue to assist and engage with people in an environment confined to the virtual space. The Mel King Institute pivoted quickly to online course offerings and community building events in order to continue to support community development professionals throughout the pandemic and beyond.
The Mel King Institute is an opportunity to participate in trainings with a cohort of individuals who are also interested in furthering their skills in health, equity, and community development.
Sharonda. I was so excited about a couple of ideas for different types of training. And we talked about community outreach and engagement, group facilitation, but it's housed within MACDC. And I've been doing this training though for kind of a while now.
And we've been able to modify this training to allow us to build up the capacity to engage folks virtually.
The Institute was just amazing in supporting that journey to making it virtual. I sort of just imagined well, it's a virtual meeting, anybody can join. And it's well, it's not really that straightforward.
Now I'm really aware that there's a digital infrastructure divide, and we try to reflect on this digital divide during our training and try to give the resources and tools that our partners need to build up the capacity of their stakeholders.
The experience of taking Mel King courses during the pandemic has actually been rather positive, because since all of the trainings have been virtual, I have had the blessing of attending trainings with people from not only different parts of the state, but people from different parts of the country, and even in some instances, the world.
We want to make sure that we create a space where people feel safe and where people feel like they can chime in and share things that connect to their work and their experiences.
My favorite MKI event that I've attended was called Spicing Up Virtual Events, because we went over some different tips and tricks and resources we can use in our virtual events. And then my favorite part was going into breakout rooms and getting a scenario as if we were actually going to plan a real virtual event. Everything from how we were going to hold it, what activities we were going to do. And that was a really fun and informative way to continue my learning in this virtual world of events.
I've actually had students come back and take the training twice because they liked it. They liked it that much.
One way that I love to just help people become more comfortable in our virtual classroom is to utilize music and different culturally stimulating questions to make sure that our participants can feel at ease and join our trainings and be productive.
One common denominator of a message that I received was that our voices can be so powerful, and that we know what works best for our community when we work directly with our community with a groundwater approach to get a grassroots message. So I will take with me the power of community and how to speak up in a positive way to affect change for the future.
If you're in planning and community development, you've been hoping for alternative ways for people to participate for a long time. You didn't think it would happen this way, and you certainly didn't wish it. But I mean, this is hopefully a segue into finding new ways for people to participate in really important decision making that happens in communities.
I think virtual engagement is not going anywhere. So I think it's important for institutions to make the investment and build up the capacity of their staff to engage the general public in a virtual manner in an effective way.
The pandemic will impact community development by ensuring access to technology for all, so that we can work with people across the globe to learn from outside sources and gain new perspectives.
I'm very heartened by the relationships that get fostered as a result of Mel King. I mean, I do think the Institute has sort of a special something about it that is certainly unique to people in the community development field and people who want to become really good community development practitioners. It's special to be a part of that.
So I hope you will be able to utilize some of the training and resources Mel King makes available, and maybe you can even attend the virtual community engagement training to build up your own capacity around how you can bring your participants into the digital realm and making sure that they have their voices heard.
That was wonderful. Thank you guys. And those programs really just highlight so much about the theme of today's events on celebrating resiliency, seeing how everyone just transitioned so flawlessly to the digital platform is really wonderful. So thank you so much for sharing all of that. I also want to do a quick shout out on the chat. Like, the chat is popping. It's been so engaging. Really encourage people to check out what people are saying and go in and add your own comments. I'm also loving some of the advocacy work that's happening in there. I see people are saying that they need to be connected to some ongoing campaigns and such, and connecting to folks that they did their breakout sessions with. And the Mel King Institute is all about community building. So this is exactly what it's for. So thank you guys so much. Speaking of Mel King Institute and community building, it is time to pass it over to our fearless, amazing leader, Sharonda Almeida, the director of the Mel King Institute. Sharonda is actually going to present the highlights and next steps over the past year. So thank you so much, Sharonda.
Thank you so much, Casey. Let's give a round of applause, even though we can't hear. She's been doing such a wonderful job with this event. Thank you so much, Casey. Thank you, Pamela and Deborah and Karen for your comments earlier. Ma, for the poem. I think it's been like a wonderful morning. I don't know if you guys can feel the energy through the screen, but we're really trying to bring you the joy of the Mel King Institute breakfast, this joy of like celebrating community that comes from, you know, I think Mel always talks about love, right? And we do this work because we have love. We have love for our community, we have love for our family, and we have love for the desire for change. We have a spirit within us that really moves us. And that's what this theme is about, celebrating resiliency. Behind the resiliency is that connection that we have with people and how to move forward. So I just wanted to, one, appreciate all of the folks who have been part of this program thus far, and also acknowledge everyone within our network. You know, we have wonderful partners, sponsors, our participants and students. You know, we know the students that get there really early. You know, we had some today that always like come early to our events and help out. So wanting to also appreciate all of you. And slide, please. As I get into some of our highlights, I did want to encourage folks to, in the chat, which Casey noted is popping, if you guys could like add some, what have you done with Mel King in the last year? I'd like to see, so I'd like to bring this slide to light. It's all numbers, 753 students. That's great, but were you one of them? What did you go to? Put it in the chat. Organizations, we had so many different organizations represented, not just within Massachusetts, but within New England and some outside of New England. So did you go to a training? Are you on a committee of ours? I know we have some steering committee members out there. Let's get it in the chat. I want folks to see how many people comprise the Mel King Institute. That's why it wasn't until this point in the agenda that I came on, because the Mel King Institute's not about the director, it's about everybody that's a part of it. So please let us know, are you an instructor? What did you teach? Where did you go? So these are some of our great numbers. We've been really maintaining at a good rate, even during the pandemic. Our instructors were able to pivot. Our students were able to really, you know, commit to be patient with us as we transition to virtual activities and programs. And there's been a lot of innovation within that. So one of the things I really wanted to talk about is what are some of the highlights? So we were able to complete a round of mentoring, which you saw the video. And that was our first time doing it completely virtual, which really opened us up to relationships across the state. So I want to say that the Mel King Institute is committed to trying to do a lot more virtual opportunities, even as we open up, because we value folks all across the state. You know, Springfield, Casey's out in Worcester. You know, we want to make sure that we are there for the entire state. And so we're still working on that, and we're looking for your support and ideas, especially if you're doing hybrid stuff. Let us know. That's our next step. So slide, please. And I would just like to conclude by congratulating our certificate program cohorts. We started the certificate program a few years ago. One of our former steering committee members, Antonio Torres from Mass Housing, who is one of our founding partners, suggested we should really have a certificate program for the Mel King Institute as a way to ground folks, almost like a level setting in community development for folks that want to get into the field. How can we demystify the field? How can we make it more accessible to folks? Even our present MACDC staff member, Catherine Martinez, recently received a certificate. We have had folks from board members, folks who are working at CDCs or not, people that are just wanting to learn more about the field and make connections. So this is a program that we take applications twice a year. There's a cohort. We make sure they network and meet folks in the field. Recently, Lynn Peterson from NeighborWorks came to one of the meetings and talked about her work. So wanting to congratulate all of the cohort graduates today. Lastly, we are really excited with some new things that are happening at the Mel King Institute. So for the rest of our update, we're going to talk more about our resident leadership. And I would like to, at this point, introduce Laura Jordan, who lives in Greenfield, and I think just started in the last year, less than a year, participating in Mel King Institute programs, and she's been a real star, and she's here to talk a little bit about her experience as a resident leader. Laura?
Good morning. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this wonderful gathering and that wonderful introduction. Yes, I am Laura Jordan. I live in Greenfield, Mass. And I live at Elm Terrace, which is a public housing project of about 110 units for elderly and disabled folks. And we are an important part of our community in terms of offering safe and decent housing for low-income folks. And I can tell you that since I came to live here about 3 years ago, I've really appreciated that we have a community here and that there is a sense of pride in where we live and that there is a great deal of potential for community. But of course, when the pandemic hit, all that was so abruptly interrupted, and we went into a kind of crisis mode here. The feelings of isolation and fear were quite palpable, and even though we live in a concentrated area, most of us rarely saw our neighbors, and this became a real crisis. It became a very dangerous situation. And fortunately, the Mel King Institute came into my life, offering training for resident leaders, core group resident leaders. And through this program, and this was only 7 months ago, through this program, we learned terms that we had never heard before that described things that we were experiencing but had no language for. We learned concepts that we could adopt to reach out to others and to start to bring a viability into our suffering community. What's happened is that in the 7 months since we started the training, and we only had initially 4 people from our neighborhood in that Mel King training, we've branched out, we've sent out ripples, and we've become stronger and connected. And there's this sense of growing like the mycelium in the forest that is reaching up and starting to nourish us and give us integrity and give us focus. And in our 7 months, from where we started to where we are now, the feeling of hope and potential and empowerment is quite palpable. And there are now many of us who are ready to get to work and create this organization so that we can be a partner with our local housing authority to answer the needs of our community. And I'm very grateful that I had a chance to speak to you today, and thank you so much for hearing me. And thank you to the Mel King Institute.
Thank you, Laura. I think it's over to me now. Is that right, Sharonda? Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Burns. I'm the director of the Resident Leadership Academy, which is a new program at the Mel King Institute. We are an expansion of the public housing training program, which Laura and hundreds of other residents have been a part of over the past 5 years. And again, I just want to thank Laura for her remarks. I never thought of mycelium as an analogy for what we're doing, but I think that's really beautiful and inspiring, and I hope that other residents are feeling that way as well. So I just wanted to take a moment. I feel like Laura kind of said it all, but I just want to take a moment to notice and to bring everyone, to help everyone understand that we are expanding the public housing training program. We are now the Resident Leadership Academy. And sort of in the spirit of what Laura has been talking about, we are going to be training residents, not just of public housing moving forward, but residents of CDC housing and other kinds of subsidized housing. So we will be launching this work in September with more information coming soon. And in the meantime, we are looking for input over the summer from CDCs who might want to partner with us as we go through this expansion, as we empower more residents. And we will also be looking, we're gonna continue doing the public housing work with DHCD and our other partners at full capacity. So we need more capacity to expand. So we are looking for funders to help us expand this work to more low-income folks across the Commonwealth. So please keep us in mind as we are looking to grow. And before I wrap up, I just want to, I wanted to actually take a moment to remember a resident leader from our community named Michael Young. For those of you who might have seen him in the yearbook, or here he is front and center smiling in this photo. So Michael passed away in April this year. It was a tremendous loss for our community. Many of you might remember meeting him. He may in fact hold the record for attending the most Mel King Institute events over the years, well over 30 just in a couple of years. So many of you may have had the pleasure of meeting Mike. He was on the board of the Norton Housing Authority, was a really strong advocate for folks with disabilities and for residents. He was a great trainer, facilitator, and really, really great at doing outreach. So he's sorely missed in our community. So I just wanted to take a moment to remember him and the many, many others that we've lost over the past year. It's been a hard year. We're resilient, but we know that it's also been a tough year. We've lost many people due to COVID and other causes. So I just want to actually invite everyone to take a moment of silence to remember those we have lost. So please do just join me for a moment of silence right now. Thank you. Well, thank you, everybody. And I'm going to pass it back to Casey.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Next, actually, we're going to have another poet join us. I'm really excited about this. In fact, I want to mention that the wonderful poet Maria Luisa Arroyo from Bay Path University actually wrote 2 poems just for us for this event. So that's really, really exciting. We're so grateful again, Maria, for joining us from Bay Path College. I'm going to pass it to you.
Thank you so much. Before I read my 2 poems aloud, I was asked to briefly share the reasons why my process. So my burning question was, how will I, as a Boricua woman poet, write poems that begin to capture Mel King's living legacy? Throughout his life and still now, Mel King has been modeling for others how to own his multifaceted brilliance in service to his beloved community. I access aspects of his life in public online spaces, including these 4. The History Makers, the nation's largest African-American video oral history collection. Of course, the Mel King Institute. The 3rd one is Black History Boston. And the 4th one is South End Tech Center video about its mission, practice, and Mel King's vision. Next slide, please. Mel King's hope. Since March 2020, this COVID-19 pandemic has been flowing like a muddy river of anxiety beneath our lives, making us, residents in our beloved Boston communities, struggle even more in these dangerous times. These same dangerous times that Mel King has been naming for decades, affordable housing, a living wage, education for our youth. Without affordable housing, without a living wage, without education for our youth, without these three branches thriving from the trunk of our family and community trees, our splintering peace of mind cracks like our sidewalks, sinks like potholes, stings like abandoned fish markets, flies like sneakers flung onto wires to signal that the neighborhoods we walk, the lives we struggle to live, do not belong to us. With hope, though, everything is possible. Hope for Mel King, though, is not only the thing with feathers, as Amherst poet Emily Dickinson once wrote. Hope for Mel King, though, is not only random acts of kindness that flare and fizzle like fireworks. Hope for Mel King is what we lovingly do for each other in these dangerous times. Masks on, we listen, we talk, we walk our hopes to many in power who love to build fences. And we demand lovingly again and again, open your doors, add our seats to your tables. No seats, we brought our own. Listen. Our voices still sing through these pandemic masks. We want what you want, a home, an education, a living wage, quality education for all our youth. You have children you love, so do we. You have elders you love, so do we. In these dangerous times, let us lovingly change fences into doors, doors into rooms with the same privileges you have. Next slide, please. Learn to teach, teach to learn. Some words need to be swept into the trash, or better still, recycled to make something new. Let's take the under out of underprivileged. Let's take the under out of underserved. Let's take the under out of underperforming. Let's stop using euphemisms, useless words that blanket and muffle and silence the reality. It is not about all these unders. According to Mel King, it is all about access. When all our boys and girls have access to technology, they will make robots that cry, laugh, and smile. They will create games where dragons and warriors, he warriors and she warriors and they warriors make peace. They will create games about the systems of the body that will show our mothers and fathers and guardians how joyful our bodies become when they buy what is good over what is convenient. They will learn how to make creatures that fly to heal, not harm. They will learn how to love animation and animate love. Because according to Mel King, love is the verb, the propulsion, the engine, the activator, the catalyst, the motherboard, the most beautiful action in the world. Let us love to teach and teach to love. Let us learn to share and share to learn. Let us build to relate and relate to build. Let us learn to teach and teach to learn. Muchísimas gracias.
Wow, muchísimas gracias, Maria. That was so powerful. I'm seeing so many people in the chat asking if they could get access to the poem. Everyone's quoting your both poems. They were both just so beautiful. And, you know, they really embodied so much about what the Mel King Institute is about and who Mel King is and the values that we as the community share. So thank you so much for that. That was really powerful and beautiful. And for folks asking, all of the poems are in the yearbook, and Nadine just shared that with us on the chat. So thank you guys so much. I am going to pass it back to Sharonda.
Thank you. And thank you, Maria and Ma. It's so great to have poetry. That's another, I guess, aspect of Mel. Mel was a poet, so he tried to bring his different values and talents in. And yeah, thank you. It's so great to have poetry. But now we're gonna have an opportunity to have a conversation. And I like this, that it's a conversation and not a keynote, because we've all been on too much Zoom and keynotes can get like very flat, you know, after a few minutes. So our goal today is to have a dialogue with Marietta Rodriguez, who is the president and CEO of NeighborWorks America. And a little bit about NeighborWorks, it's a national organization. They have, I think, over 240 NeighborWork network organizations, of which there are about a dozen here in Massachusetts. And we have been partners, and they have been a great supporter and sponsor of the Mel King Institute since its inception. You know, most recently, we partnered with NeighborWorks on the Core Skills Toolkit, which is our way of supporting community organizers and community engagement staff and building skills and becoming better at their job and demystifying it. So we really appreciate our relationship with NeighborWorks, and we're happy to have Marietta Rodriguez here with us today. Marietta's story is really interesting. She reminds me of, there was some commercial back in the day where it was like, I liked it so much, I bought the company. So Maria is somebody who she got a house through a NeighborWork network organization about 25 years ago. And she was so impressed with it, she ended up, you know, joining that organization that helped her get the house, and then running the program. And now she's running NeighborWorks. It's like amazing. So she's a real superstar who understands from like the ground level what this work is. And it's really exciting to meet with a leader who's been able to see all those different perspectives and really bring her work of addressing inequities and supporting low-income families and communities through superstar programs like home ownership programs, foreclosure prevention, community building, and engagement programs. So welcome, Marietta. And joining us for this conversation, we have two staff members from MACDC members from, also they are participants in the Mel King Institute. First, we have Jason Boyd, who is the community organizing director at Codman Square, NDC. He's been there for many years, I'm not gonna out him, but he does really great work and runs the men's health and wellness initiative, the Men of Color Health and Wellness Initiative, as well as other programs and resident leadership-led initiatives. So welcome, Jason. Jason is also a member of the Alliance for Racial Equity Steering Committee at the Mel King Institute. Our second panelist joining us is Shavella Lee Pacheco, who is a community planning manager at Madison Park Development Corporation. And if you notice by her picture, we have a younger Shavella here. I'm so tickled by this picture. It's her with Mr. Mel King at one of his breakfasts. And if folks don't know, this breakfast event was designed because Mr. Mel King had community breakfast, community brunch at his house every Sunday for like 40 or 50 years. So this is her at one of those brunches. So thank you for sharing this photo, Shavella. And Shavella is actually, in a moment, I just wanted to give a context for this conversation. You know, we asked the participants and Marietta, you know, what do we want to uplift here? So we're going to have a dialogue looking at, you know, resiliency, looking at our work and what comes to this work, and also talking about leadership. And I invite folks to also add questions and comments in the chat like we have been. Let's keep the chat going. I will be monitoring the chat, and we'll be rotating questions between Shavella and Jason. And Shavella is going to start us off with the first question.
Yes, thank you for that introduction, Sharonda, and I'm so grateful to be here in this space with everyone. Maria, I just want to say how much I loved your poetry, especially Learn to Teach. As Sharonda shared with that picture of younger me, my first job was actually with Learn to Teach. So it has that poem has a special place in my heart now. But Marietta, Sharonda mentioned a little bit about how, you know, you came to be within NeighborWorks America. And I just want to ask, what brings you to this work? And can you share a few touch points about how you gained your leadership skills?
Sure. I'm really happy to be here with all of you. I'm so inspired by all of your work. So thank you for inviting me. And Shavella, thank you. I think you're on maternity leave, or just, so thank you for coming this morning and talking with me. You heard a little bit about my story. So I don't know if when I was thinking about my career or what I wanted to do, if I thought about a career in community development and housing. Frankly, I don't even know if I knew that was a career. But right out of college, I was living in my where I grew up, my childhood home in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and it's a pretty high cost market if you know anything about Santa Fe in the Southwest. And I was forced to move back in with my parents, much to probably their chagrin. And my father signed me up for a home buyer ed class because he was convinced that I needed to put my money somewhere productive as opposed to wasting it in his mind on shoes and clothes and things that I wanted to spend my money on. So I went to this home buyer ed class, and I thought he was crazy because there was no way on my salary and my student loan debt I was going to be able to purchase a home. But I learned through that program through that class that there was a program to help me with down payment assistance, and if I saved money, they would match it. And after a while, I was able to purchase my first home, as you heard that. And then I was asked, because I was a resident and a recipient of that program, I was asked to go on the organization's board. And I think I was one of their youngest board members. And then I eventually went to work for them, set up a program, and went to go work for NeighborWorks America. So that's sort of what brings me here. It was not necessarily that intentional. I think opportunities present themselves to folks, and you don't always know when there is a life-changing opportunity that you know that sort of looking back. But I also grew up in a family where community service and community building was incredibly important. I went to an elementary and junior high school that was taught by Franciscans, and certainly the element of service and building community and bringing voice of people that aren't normally heard in powerful positions is a value that we led with. And I'm also a lifelong Girl Scout. So the notion of service and community is something that is always around me, and sort of a value that I also bring to this work. So that's how I sort of got to where I am today, I guess.
Good morning, and thank you for sharing a piece of your leadership narrative. And kind of in the same vein, with a little bit of a pivot, I would like to know, what can organizations do to promote leadership of people of color, and what questions should these organizations be asking themselves to identify, amplify, and highlight people of color within their organizations?
Such a great question. I think, first of all, the exercise of providing opportunity needs to be very intentional and very mindful. And when organizations are looking at themselves, sort of being self-aware about who's at the table and who's not at the table, what voices are not here that would make decisions better and more informed. So I think that's that intentionality and mindfulness. And it's easy for organizations to get, and for management to get into a rhythm and a cadence and just operate. I think it takes time and intention to step back and say, okay, who's not here? Who are we not including? And find a way to do that. In terms of staff, I also think it takes some intentionality to think about opportunities, think about how we grow staff, how we build talent, how we build managerial muscle to mentor and have that infused in all parts of the organization, not just in hiring, but in other things like new programs, how organizations hire vendors, I think the more diversity and that value can be infused in all operations in a very mindful and intentional way, the outcome is so much better. But it takes some intentionality to do that, and measure where you want to be. What does success look like for your organization, and figure out how to move that needle and share that across the organization.
Put the measures out on the front end of the process. Is that what I'm hearing?
I always think it's a helpful question to ask, and one that I often try to ask and probably make people that work for me a little crazy is, if we were sitting around this table in 3 years, 5 years, maybe even a year, depending on what we're talking about, what would success look like? What's the story that we want to tell? And we build some agreement on, okay, this is the story we want to tell. So in order to tell that story, what do we need to get there? And being putting that up in the front of the conversation, because sometimes I think we assume that everyone is on the same page with us, and you might be on the same page on some things, but there may be things where there's differences. And if you take some time at the beginning to figure out where are you trying to move together, you can often move together more quickly, but you can also pick up some things that may be missing from the process, and you can put that in place early on and avoid pitfalls later. But again, it takes some self-awareness and being able to pause and check in with others around you.
I really appreciate that you brought, forward that we need to have that narrative at the forefront, right? Thinking about what our goals are to begin with. And I'm curious, with all that you know now, what advice would you give to your younger self? Maybe the Marietta in Girl Scouts, or maybe Marietta in college. What advice would you give yourself?
I think that I would give myself, I think two things. I would say, it's going to be okay. Don't be so hard on yourself. It's going to be okay. And two, don't be afraid of opportunities that present themselves that you may not have envisioned. I didn't envision buying a house so young, and I certainly didn't envision going on a local housing organization board. But look at the world that it opened up to me. I was on a very different career path. And so I think the advice would be open to those opportunities, because you never know, particularly volunteer opportunities, you never know who you might meet, what opportunities you might meet. It may not be career necessarily, but you might meet some incredibly beautiful people that you wouldn't have normally met if you hadn't opened yourself up to those opportunities, and how much more enriched will your life be as a result. So really just being open and not so prescriptive about what the path needs to be.
Thank you for that. And within the same round, we talked a little bit about kind of that internal leadership development. Can you share a little bit in regards to how NeighborWorks is working with community in regards to leadership development in formal ways and so on and so forth?
Some of you may know the NeighborWorks story of origin, but we started by replicating a model that was taking place in the late 60s, early 70s in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where a resident leader, along with her neighbors, her name was Dorothy Richardson, were frustrated because they couldn't access loans to fix their homes. They were in essentially a redlined neighborhood, and they came together and organized themselves. They brought in the municipal leaders from the government, as well as local bankers, and convinced them to work together with them to provide the working capital that the community needed. And out of that formed this nonprofit, Neighborhood Housing Services, that managed a revolving loan fund that would lend money from investment from the local lenders out to the community. So I share that story only to say, to illustrate how resident leadership and the voice of the resident is inherent to the way NeighborWorks leads. It's part of our organizational DNA. So we support a network, as you've heard, or you may know, of more than 240 locally run nonprofits. In order to be eligible to be part of the network, residents need to be on that board. We also run a very large community leadership institute every year, where organizations from those teams from those organizations come together at a conference, and they decide on a community project they're going to work on. We resource that work. Certainly, people know us a lot through our NeighborWorks training institutes, both now virtually and in person. We have a variety of courses there, really designed for all kinds of leaders to develop their leadership muscle as they go back into their community, whether they work for an organization, that's a NeighborWorks organization, or a local municipality, or even a financial institution. We also provide programs around with boards of nonprofits. We have a program called Excellence in Governance that works with NeighborWorks organization boards and non-NeighborWorks organization boards in developing their leadership as they, organizations, particularly housing and community development organizations, are really growing in complexity. And the boards are required to provide governance over these very complex organizations. So really being intentional about growing their capacity for governance is something that is important to us. We also have programs geared to leadership development for CEOs. We work with one of your neighbors, the Harvard Joint Center at the Kennedy School, and we offer an Achieving Excellence program, which is an 18-month program where leaders from nonprofits come together and refine their leadership skills, but also work on a project that they want to advance in their organization. So I guess that's all to say we try to look at comprehensively, how do we build leadership for the organization, for the community, that advances mission of the organization and of where the community wants to go.
Oh, Jason, you're on mute. I see you are responding to Marietta.
Apologies. No, I was just, thank you for that thoughtful response. I didn't realize I was muted. Sorry about that. And to pivot a little bit, we find ourselves in a time and space in this nation, maybe globally, but most certainly in this nation, where there's a lot of talk about resiliency. It's become a bit of a buzzword. It's important, but I would like to ask some of your thoughts of what does resiliency mean to you, and how have community development corporations across the country supported resiliency and been innovative in addressing the needs of the people they serve?
We are certainly hearing a lot about resiliency. It is becoming a buzzword. Resiliency means, to me, when I see resiliency, I see leadership, perseverance, responsiveness, flexibility, preparedness, despite disruption that may be going on in the environment. So it could be a natural disaster, it could be financial crisis, it could be a pandemic, it could be a transition of a leader. But are people able to continue to lead, be flexible, and be responsive in light of that disruption. So that's sort of what, when I think of resiliency, I think of that. I think we have seen incredible examples of resiliency in the community and throughout the NeighborWorks network during the pandemic. We've had organizations who never worked in, never provided food or worked in food insecurity in the pandemic, but that was a huge gap and need in the community that they were serving. So they began finding a way to do that. We had organizations who traditionally met with their clients and customers face to face, and they had to quickly pivot to provide some virtual interaction so that they can continue to serve. We have an organization who that works in Los Angeles, California. It's one example, a community of friends. They provide rental housing for really high risk populations, formerly homeless, physically and mentally impaired individuals, and veterans. And they knew early in the pandemic that their residents were going to have a really hard time finding supplies, basic supplies for themselves, because of transit and transportation issues. So they sent their staff out and throughout the Los Angeles metro area to buy toilet paper and paper towels and cleaning products. And some stores even refused to sell supplies to them because they thought that they were hoarding these supplies, when in reality, they were really just trying to get supplies for their residents. I think they worked that out. But again, their ability to be responsive in the moment really showed how attuned they were to the residents in their community and the needs. So I think that's a great example of resiliency and responding in the moment. I mean, frankly, NeighborWorks and NeighborWorks organizations are not necessarily first responders in crises, but what we find over and over again, NeighborWorks organizations and community development organizations throughout this country are hubs in crisis for people the community to come and figure out what's happening in that community and what resources are there to help residents. So, you know, in the middle of a pandemic, there's a lot of resources regarding vaccinations, regarding unemployment benefits, rental and eviction assistance, maybe forbearance if you're a homeowner. But if you're in the middle of the pandemic and you're trying to manage your family, it's very hard to figure out, of all those programs, what applies to me and how to access it. And I think community development organizations play a critical role as sort of that triage and that community hub. And I think that's a story we don't hear about very often, sort of unsung heroes, but that's really important work. But I think we've seen organizations in communities flex to respond to needs. The NeighborWorks network has not normally been, you know, a medical provider, but we've tracked over 10,000 COVID vaccinations being administered through the help of the network. So again, what are the gaps, and how can people how can they respond to those needs in the community?
That's awesome. It sounds like you shared a story of like mutual resilience between both organizations and community. And it's good to have a good shot in our arm of a little bit of good news on the wind on a Wednesday morning. So thank you for sharing that.
100%. Nothing like those incredibly powerful poems, but there is some great work happening in the communities. Yes.
And I just wanted to note one of the comments in the chat, if I can find it, because all of a sudden it just got like really busy now. But there was a comment about resiliency, not only bouncing back. I can't find it now. Sorry. Resiliency is not just the ability to bounce back, but rather to bounce forward. And I kind of like that that little metaphor there. Thank you, Marietta, Jason, and Shavella. I just wanted to, for our last question, and I'm hoping folks can just stay on for another like 5 to 7 minutes. I know we're running slightly over, but I wanted to pose this last question. You know, what are some of the major factors and considerations and trends that we need to keep in mind as a field as we're moving forward, as we're moving out of this pandemic? Yeah, and you partner with a lot of different folks. So what are people saying, and what are you thinking about?
I want to reckon back to that comment about how resilience is moving forward. I do think the way we work will be changed as a result of this pandemic. And so thinking about new skills, new ways of work, how to support the communities and our staffs in different ways, I think has to be part of that conversation and planning. It's hard to know what's around the corner, but even as we think about office space and different skills and how we leverage and utilize technology, I think that has to be brought into the mix. I also feel, there is a tremendous lack of inventory of affordable housing, both on rental and the homeownership side, in almost every community in this country. And how do we partner together with providers and developers to make sure we are working to bring more decent, safe, affordable housing into the market? The third thing I would say is what the other thing that's happened in this pandemic is it really has put a highlight of how important home is, right? Because right now we are accessing our work, we're educating our children, we're maybe even accessing unemployment benefits and other social services, all from our homes. And the importance of broadband access, I think, is critically important. And how can we make that more equitable, particularly in some of our rural communities? But home is the hub for everything, and nothing has really proven how important that is in this pandemic. So making sure people have continued opportunities to find the home they can. Look at that beautiful baby.
Yay, let me see the baby.
And then the fourth thing I would say is the pandemic has also proved how important cross-sector collaboration is. 10, 15 years ago, housing, healthcare, education, we all worked in our silos pretty well. But I think this pandemic has really shown how we need more resources, we need new relationships, and the cross-sector relationship is going to help us move forward, and we are going to leverage our strengths that way. So I think those are the things that are top of mind for me about what's different. How do we move ahead and think about recovery and the new normal?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I would totally agree. Like issues of like access and accessibility were really, rose to the surface. And I think, we always knew that it was an issue type of thing, but it's sad like to see like how, I don't know, insidious it is, and how like intense it is. This issue of like, access, and also the issue of like belonging within our community and that community connection. I think your, comment about different partnerships, relationships, and sectors. I mean, community development is, what is it? You can come to Joe's MKI class to learn more about it, but community development, is pretty broad, and we do partner with a lot of different folks. So I agree, like strengthening those is really important, including the Mel King Institute strengthening our relationships with our partners like NeighborWorks. And we definitely value the work that we do together. And I just have really enjoyed getting to know you, Marietta, in this conversation. And I wanted to thank Shavella and Jason for joining us this morning. I know we're running a few moments behind, but if folks could give us applause for our panelists here, and just thank them for the time, for sharing. It was really great to hear your words and your story, Marietta.
Thank you. Really, thank you for having me. And we really do value our relationship with the Mel King Institute. Thank you.
You're very welcome. So with that, I'm going to turn it. Yes, Casey, take us home.
Thank you so much, Marietta, and thank you, Shavella and Jason. That was a really engaging conversation, and similar to what Sharonda said, I feel like I've gotten to know you, Marietta, through this, and it was really wonderful. We do value our relationship with NeighborWorks, but also personally, it was wonderful to hear from you this morning. Thank you so much. The Mel King Institute is all about sharing resources and opportunities. For our closing activity, we have a resource board for sharing information. Leah, can you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
Absolutely. Just going to pull up the resource board right now. So I see that there's some people already on the page, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. We have different categories for different types of resources that you have access to through this board. So we have a bunch of books here that are available. We have a bunch of really cool podcasts. I can see that people were inventive with showing the podcast with little pictures, which is awesome. We have a whole bunch of films and videos across a range of topics. We have a few articles, and we have a few organizations that people wanted to highlight. So I very much encourage everyone to check this out, add anything that you are interested in. The first page is an instructions page, so you can see how to do that as well. But this is the resource board.
And Leah, do you want us to be engaging in this board right now? Should we take the opportunity, or is this for something for us to do after the event?
Yeah, feel free to add things right now as they come up. But you'll continue to have access after the event as well. I know people need to leave.
Wonderful. So we definitely encourage everyone to both add resources onto the resource board as well as collect resources from the resource board. It's something that you could definitely take a moment to do it right now, hopefully before you leave the breakfast, but also know that this resource will remain available to you and hopefully will continue to be added to by all of our community members and all of our participants in the Mel King Institute. I just want to thank everyone so much for joining us today. I thank the entire Mel King Institute team. I thank all of the speakers, the amazing poets that we had. It was a really wonderful, inspiring event. You know, I was focusing on the chat, and Sharon from the Neighborhood Developers wrote in the chat before she left that it was encouraging and rejuvenating. And I think that those two words just really solidified my feelings as well on the event this morning. You know, it's always so rejuvenating to be together. It's always such a good connection to remind me, and I think everyone, of the work that we do and feeling so connected to everyone, especially in these times when we're all so distant and we're not able to be together in person. I feel really connected to everyone this morning, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be here with all of you. I hope next year we could do it in person, but again, thank you all so much for being here, and thank you so much for the Mel King Institute for this wonderful, engaging breakfast this morning.
Thank you, Casey, for being our illustrious MC. That was wonderful. And I would just like to note the original artwork that's on the slide that was created by our very own Leah Downs, her portrait of Mr. Mel King. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, Casey, and all the MKI staff. Thank you.